We are happy that you are here. That means you want to further develop in your life. Thank you for joining us when we talk about mindset, motivation, discipline, how to defeat struggle, and how to take responsibility for your own happiness. I am your host Joakim, and together with me is the co-host and my sister Annika. Let's make a 101% effort in making our life the best we can. Welcome back, everyone. Today's episode is about ego. Who are you? What are the different parts of your personality telling you? In this episode, we will talk more about some of the inner challenges we have in the battle between our lusts, our moral, and our responsibility to it all. We have an ego. How well do you know yours? Are you ready to discover it and challenge your own inner self?
There are three elements of our personality defined by Sigmund Freud: id, superego, and ego. The id is the instinct-driven, pleasure-seeking part of the mind, focused on immediate gratification. This is in our unconscious mind. It is described as a devil whispering in your ear, suggesting lusts, needs, and pleasures. Superego is the moral conscience, representing social and parental standards, striving for ideal behavior. This is an internal judge, like an angel whispering in your ear. Ego is the rational mediator that balances the id's impulses with the real world constraints. It prevents us from acting irrationally on the desires created by the id. The ego is our conscious self. It operates on the reality principle and the ability to make decisions.
The ego negotiates between the impulsive ID and the judgmental superego, often using defense mechanisms to reduce conflicts or anxiety. The ego functions in the conscious, preconscious, and unconscious mind. The ego is the personality competent responsibility for dealing with reality and is or realistic part of the personality. Freud's model helps shape modern psychotherapy by highlighting unconscious motives, the importance of childhood experience, and how internal conflict can affect behaviors.
For example, you're going to do your homework and you struggle with motivation. It is your id that tells you, this is boring, I'll rather watch a movie. Your superego, on the other hand, tells you that it is important to do my homework. That is expected of me and will reward me in my education. Also, the superego analyzes the pain against pleasure that my brother talked a lot about in the Awakening the Giant Within episodes, which is episode 24 and 25. You would feel embarrassed if you failed education, but you would feel as a good student if you accomplish it, and these feelings will motivate you. Then the ego will analyze these two sides and find a compromise and make a realistic decision. In this case, the ego might tell you, yes, the homework is a bit boring, but I have to do it, so I don't fail the class. I'll watch a movie this weekend instead, but right now I have to finish all my homework.
People with strong egos have confidence, emotional intelligence, and common sense. They both manage their emotion and can find solution to life's problems. Rather than react, they have a defined sense of self and are resilient to life's changes. If you don't have a strong ego, relationship will be difficult. A healthy ego is essential for self empowerment and self love, while an overly dominant ego can lead to conflict, suffering, and isolation.
But there are some challenges with it as well, because ego is oftentimes used as a negative word to describe someone as selfish, self-centered, and self-important. But in psychology, ego is described as a neutral and essential part of the human psyche. Ryan Holiday wrote a book called Ego is the Enemy, where he describes ego as the inner voice that tells us that we are better than what we actually are. He states that ego manifests itself differently in different phases of our life. On the way up, ego can be problematic because it tells us we already learned everything there is to know. It gets us caught up in what we think we deserve and how we think things should be. It prevents us from putting in the work and therefore cuts off opportunities to be successful. Further on, he states that on the top, ego makes you arrogant, and it makes you feel like you are entitled to success and like you are invisible. This makes you difficult to work with, and these kind of thoughts are very harmful. But I personally think that we should use the theories we have learned from the psychology field and dig deep within ourselves. We should also be aware of the critics about ego and the downfall ego can have if it makes us arrogant. But I don't think we should distance ourselves from our ego. It is a necessary part of our personalities and therefore a necessary part of our personal development journey. It is as if we are taught early on that we cannot be ego, that it is a toxic trait. But as we have learned here, it isn't. It is the balancing force between lusts and morals. The ego is that part of the id which has been modified by the direct influence of the external world. So it is a protector against only following our own lusts.
Ego is a part of us, our personality, and it is, of course, a necessity one. The self is not static but dynamic. We change and develop throughout our entire lives. The ego represents different things depending on the context. In psychology, it meditates between the unconscious and reality. It meditates between lust and morals. In philosophy, it's sometimes seen as the thinking subject or as an illusion. In spirituality, it's often viewed as an obstacle to self realization or enlightenment. Ultimately, the ego can be both a necessary aspect of human life and a source of limitation or suffering, depending on how it is managed. The ego plays a crucial role in shaping our personalities and how we experience and navigate the world. It's an integral part of our psychological makeup and influence how we think, behave, and interact with others. There are confusion in the world about the topic, so let us dive deeper in why it is important for our personal development.
First off, the reason it is important for our sense of self is self-identity and self-understanding. Without the ego, there will be no clear sense of I or me. The self-awareness is fundamental for making decisions, setting goals, and engaging with the world. It helps us form a stable sense of personality, which includes our preferences, values, and beliefs.
It is a mediation between desire and reality. By considering both internal desire, that we call ID, and external circumstances, the superego, the ego helps us make practical decisions that allow us to function in the real world. This balancing act is crucial for personal development, enabling us to set and achieve realistic goals while managing impulses. Also, it helps us coping with conflict. Life often presents situations that involve internal conflict, such as decision between what we want, the idea, and what we believe is right, the superego. The ego helps us find solutions that help us avoid excessive guilt or frustration, contributing to emotional well-being.
It also protects the self. The ego serves as a psychological defense mechanism. It helps us protect our sense of identity by creating defense mechanisms, such as repression, denial, or projection, to deal with anxiety, stress, and feelings of inadequacy. These defenses helps preserve our self-esteem and mental stability, making the ego a vital part of psychological resilience. The ego helps us react to challenges, criticism, and perceived threats to our self-image. For example, if someone feels their sense of competence is being attacked, the ego might activate defense mechanisms to preserve their self-worth.
It is an social navigation. The ego is key in shaping how we relate to others. It governs our social interaction by influencing how we present ourselves and how we respond to social cues. A healthy ego allows us to engage in positive, constructive relationships, while an unhealthy or inflated ego can lead to conflict and isolation. A well developed ego gives us the confidence to express our opinions and desire, set boundaries, and engage in social situations. Also, help us understand and interpret social feedback, which is essential for personal growth and social integration. The ego's interaction with others can either foster empathy or lead to self centered behavior. A balanced ego allows us to consider others' perspective and foster healthy relationships, while an overactive ego can result in arrogance or lack of empathy.
It helps us have a goal-oriented behavior. The ego is involved in our drive to achieve and pursue personal growth goals. It shapes how we set ambitions, work toward them, and succeed. Without an ego, we might lack motivation, direction, and the ability to assess progress. The ego helps us identify personal desires and motivates us to achieve them. It's closely linked with the willpower needed to make plans and see them through, which is important for personal fulfillment and success.
The ego is also shaped by the society and culture we live in. It helps us integrate social values and norms into our personality, enabling us to function as responsible member of the community. The superego, a part of the ego, is influenced by family, culture, and society. It helps shape our understanding of acceptable behavior, societal rules, and ethnical standards, contributing to a well adjusted personality in a particular social context.
A flexible ego allows for personal growth and adaptability. As we encounter new experiences, challenges, and knowledge, the ego helps us assimilate these into our self concept. A healthy ego can adapt to change, integrate new information, and evolve over time. The ego facilitates self reflection and the ability to learn from experiences. A person with a developed ego can look at their actions and motivations, making adjustment for personal growth and improvement.
The ego is essential for our personality because it helps us form a concrete identity, navigate relationship, make decision, protect ourselves from emotional harm, and strive toward goals. While an inflated or fragile ego can cause issues like arrogance or insecurity, a balanced ego allows us to thrive, adapt, and contribute positively to our personal and social environments. The key is understanding and cultivating a healthy ego that enables growth, connection, and self awareness.
The important thing is to investigate it within yourself. Now we have some information about what it is, but let's take a look at how you can get to know your own ego better.
Discovering your ego involves a process of self awareness, reflection, and understanding how you relate to yourself and the world around you, since the ego is essentially the part of your psyche that helps you shape your identity. Discovering it requires exploring both the conscious and unconscious aspect of yourself. Here's how you can begin this journey.
Starting with self reflection. Take time to observe your thoughts, behaviors, and emotional reactions in different situations. The ego often manifests in the way we think about ourselves and how we respond to challenges, success, and failures. Ask yourself, what do I know and think about myself? How do I react to criticism or praise? Do I feel threatened easily or overly proud of certain aspects of my identity?
And you can explore your triggers. Your ego is often most visible when you're triggered, whether by criticism, rejection, or failure. Those situations reveal what your identity with most and where your sense of self might be fragile. Reflection on triggers. You, when do I feel defensive or overly reacted? What makes me feel insecure or threatened? What emotion comes up when someone challenges my beliefs or identity? Understanding those emotions Understanding those emotional reactions helps you recognize where your ego feels threatened or inflated, offering insight into how it shapes your personality.
Examine your relationships. The ego is also influenced by how we relate to others. Our interactions often reveal the parts of our ego that seek validation, approval, or superiority. By paying attention to how you behave in different social settings, you can spot patterns in your own ego. Ask yourself, do I seek approval from others? How do I react when someone disagrees with me or challenges my views? Do I find it hard to admit when I'm wrong, or do I always need to be right? Your relationships, both positive and negative, can be mirrors, reflecting parts of your ego that you might otherwise miss.
Understand your need for control. The ego often seeks control, power, or dominance to feel secure and validated. Recognizing when you try to control situation or other people can reveal a lot about your ego. Reflect upon this and notice. Do I feel uncomfortable when things are uncertain or out of my control? Do I often try to influence how others perceive me or control outcomes? How do I react when life feels unpredictable or are out of my hands?
Also, use meditation, mindfulness, be honest to yourself, journal your process, and never stop developing this. It is a lifelong journey. As you observe how your ego influences your thoughts, reactions, and relationships, you can begin to recognize when it serves you and when it limits you. The goal isn't to eliminate the ego, but to develop a healthy, balanced ego that allows you to be authentic, self aware, and connected with others.
So don't let your ego ruin for your life.
Mm.
Don't be too stubborn and let your
Mhm.
ego destroy relationship, career, jobs, and a lot of other important things in your life.
Mhm. Definitely. And going through all of this, we learned about it in psychology when I was taking my education as well. And it makes me think a lot more now about the personal development journey because it actually teaches us that there are three aspects of your personality: the id with lusts and desires, the superego with more moral standards, and the ego that balances this all. So if you train your ego to be very strong, you will win over your lusts. If your lust is to always watch a movie, never do your homework, these kind of things, you have to train your ego to make decisions to rule over this So this is extremely important for our personal development.
Absolutely. Give more and expect less can also be a little key here.
Definitely. Those are great thoughts.
Yeah. So this episode was recorded on March 28, 2025. In the show note, you will find the link to our infamous homepage, the 101%podcast.com, where you can subscribe to a free weekly newsletter, donate to our podcast, and all the information about subscription you need. We share for you. Take care and not let your ego destroy for you. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. It is important for us to get out our message so we can help as many people as possible. And we will highly appreciate it if you could take 1 minute of your time to follow us on social media and review the show on Apple Podcast and Spotify. All links are below. Our Instagram is the 101% podcast. Until next time, take care and go 101% into achieving your goals. You owe it to yourself.